don't know if what my answer is going to work for this little pop we just did on the screen, because I love Randy and glad he's back as well. And this is not about Randy because I think this is general consensus. I think it should be amended.
Oh.
I think that there either has to, at this point, just be an agreed upon top 3, or there has to be an agreed upon top 5. And by that I mean this. If you just want to say Mahomes, Allen, Lamar, the guy who, has won a bunch of Super Bowls and has a couple MVPs, and the other 2 most recent MVPs who are always in the playoffs every single year, that's your top 3, and after that is debatable. Or if you want to say Joe Burrow gets to stay in this hallowed ground despite being more than the other guys an injury risk and has been to the playoffs twice in his career, then you also, the flip side to that fair coin is the guy who doesn't have the numbers but always puts his team in position and just won the Super Bowl, Jalen Hurts, he has to be in that top 5 as well. So
yeah. So I want to talk about this. It just shows you how important the situation is where a quarterback lands. I think the Cincinnati Bengals are such a disaster of a team in how they are run. And I think the Philadelphia Eagles are as great as it gets in how they are run. The problem with making a statement like that, it often gets twisted in a way to downplay what a Jalen Hurts was able to accomplish with the Philadelphia Eagles. And again, this is where I try my best to be as consistent as possible, and I feel as though when I do that, and I take great strides to do that, then I can then make certain statements that should hopefully land more smoothly than if I was just kind of all over the place. And I do not think Jalen Hurts would be winning Super Bowls with the Cincinnati Bengals. I do not think that Jalen Hurts would be having the level of success that he's having right now with the Philadelphia Eagles than he would with the Cincinnati Bengals. And on the flip side, I think Joe Burrow would have significantly more amount of success if he was with the Philadelphia Eagles than being with the Cincinnati Bengals. But that in no way means that what Jalen Hurts has been doing or the success that he's had should now be downplayed. Right? I think Jalen Hurts would have a tremendous amount of success with the Kansas City Chiefs, with the Buffalo Bills, with the Baltimore Ravens, with the Los Angeles Rams. I don't think Jalen Hurts would have a lot of success with the Carolina Panthers or the Washington Commanders before they kind of stabilized things with Cliff Kingsbury and Dan Quinn. And I feel that way with pretty much all of the quarterbacks, all the great quarterbacks, right? Like, what I'm not saying is that you can just throw in, insert any random quarterback. Bryce Young, I mean, he's not necessarily random because he was a number 1 overall pick, but any of these other 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 quarterbacks, like they're in terms of their rankings, and that they're now just ripping off Super Bowls. I'm not telling you that Geno Smith is going to 2 Super Bowls in 3 years and is balling out and setting records. That's not what I'm saying by any stretch of the imagination. I also don't fundamentally believe that Nick Wright believes that Jalen Hurts is a top 5 quarterback. I really don't. I that is what my true gut says. I don't believe it. I don't believe that he's saying it. I don't even 100% know why. Maybe because he heard what I was saying before, where it's like, if you keep bashing all these quarterbacks, well, then it's not impressive that, then it's even worse that they either beat Mahomes or that Mahomes beats them. Because if Purdy's a bad quarterback and Jimmy Garoppolo's a bad quarterback and Jalen Hurts is a bad quarterback, then all 3 of your Super Bowls are against bad quarterbacks. So it's like, who cares? And Lamar Jackson always chokes in the playoffs, according to Nick Wright. So like, then beating him is not that impressive, right? Like, it's just, and if Joe Burrow is not even a top 5 quarterback, then beating him in the playoffs is not that impressive, right? Then you're just beating a lot of quarterbacks that are not that good. And now he's like, well, Jalen Hurts, is a top 5 quarterback. There's no shame in losing to a top quarterback in the NFL, especially in historic fashion. But my gut tells me that he would obviously, without a doubt, pick any of those 4 quarterbacks over him. I believe that he would pick Matthew Stafford over Jalen Hurts. I believe that. I believe that he believes that Caleb Williams is going to be better. If he had to pick right now between Caleb Williams and Jalen Hurts, he would pick Caleb. And I believe that he would pick Jaden Daniels over Jalen Hurts. But the only reason why he wouldn't is because there's that weird battle between Caleb and Jaden. And he's bashed Justin Herbert. I believe that he would take Justin Herbert over Jalen Hurts. This is just my beliefs. And you could be like, well, how do you know how he thinks? And it's like, well, because I watch a lot of these clips and I know how minds work personally, like that's, so, but, yeah, that's my read on it, honestly. And I know a lot of Eagles fans are going to be like, having him 5th is ridiculous. He's won a Super Bowl. Josh Allen hasn't. Joe Burrow's been to a Super Bowl, etc., hasn't been there. Lamar Jackson never, and that's why. I mean, I'm such a broken record. These conversations are so much more complex than anyone really wants to admit. And when you have shows like this, they're at the, they're beholden to the structure of the show where it's like an 8-minute segment or whatever it is, and then they have to cut to commercial. It's like, I can just go on and on and on. I can also talk about the same thing in 100 different videos. They can't do that on a TV show. I've already made like 100 different Jalen Hurts videos talking about it and being able to unpack this again and again and again. And I think it's all true statements that Jalen Hurts has played bigger in bigger games, in bigger moments than a Lamar Jackson. And that's totally true. Same thing with even a Joe Burrow. Like, yes, Joe Burrow had an inferior team than Jalen Hurts had with the Philadelphia Eagles when they both made it to the Super Bowl. So in my mind, it is incredibly impressive and arguably more impressive that Joe Burrow was able to get his team to the Super Bowl than it was for Jalen Hurts to get to the Super Bowl. But, and there's a huge but, it's more impressive. Jalen Hurts played more impressive and higher quality and did more for his team than Joe Burrow did in said Super Bowl against a better team. So that's why, like, it's always like, what conversation are we having? Lamar Jackson in various years has had to do more for his team, depending on what season we're talking about here. And make no mistake about it, Lamar Jackson has been on great teams. Don't let any Lamar fan tell you otherwise. But again, it's objectively and subjectively true that Jalen Hurts individually, like, this is where you have to look at the real moments. And this is why it was so perfect. And I'm going to highlight this. I'm going to make a separate video. I've been talking about making a separate video, and I'm going to do it one of these days. Individually, when we put a quarterback in a true vacuum, and it was perfect in the Super Bowl against Patrick Mahomes, seeing when the moments that Patrick Mahomes failed, and this is not a knock on Patrick Mahomes, this is an elevation of Jalen Hurts. There was these moments when it was like, I need my quarterback to get it done. I need him to evade the pressure. I need him to make the right throw at the right time. I need him to do something special in the biggest moment, in the most crucial aspect of the game. And in the Super Bowl, Jalen Hurts did it every single time. And Patrick Mahomes failed in that Super Bowl essentially every single time. And again, I don't blame Mahomes for even losing that Super Bowl. The Eagles were a better team. And that really is my fundamental take. But in a vacuum, it's like Jalen Hurts elevated. Yes, I defended Lamar Jackson in the playoffs for when he lost against the Buffalo Bills. He was leading that team back in and absolutely should have and could have come away with the win. And I went through all these other times when it happened to Tom Brady, when it happened to Patrick Mahomes, Manning, Stafford, Burrow, all these other great quarterbacks who have, had wonky first halves or just weren't flawless but still came away with the win. And, and there it is. They're just considered great. And you have someone like Lamar Jackson who's considered choking when it wasn't really fundamentally his fault. But at the same time, it's also true that if Lamar Jackson played better, then he wins. That's the truth. And you could make that statement about Joe Burrow. You could make that statement about even Josh Allen. So you can't that's where then Jalen Hurts kind of graduates that aspect, where it's kind of just like, no, Jalen Hurts did exactly what he needed to do multiple times, and it was enough. But then again, it then blurs into, well, it's like, well, would it have been enough if he was with the Ravens or with the Bills, or, you know? And it's just like, it's complicated. In some weird way, it's like, when the way how Nick started this conversation, where he's like, we have to change the way we have this conversation. It's got to be a bona fide top 3 or top 5 or something. And it's like, in a lot of ways, we all have to decide as a sports talk community, do we factor in wins in Super Bowls or not? Yes or no? Do we factor in the team that you're playing, or that you have around you? Yes or no? And the problem is, no one can decide. Everyone just picks and chooses when they want it to be a receiver, a running game, a running attack, the O-line, the defense. And this is why I always use Patrick Mahomes as that reference point, because it's like, I showed you guys in 2022, his O-line was technically better than what the Philadelphia Eagles had in 2024. And yet nobody talks about that O-line in 22. Nobody. And yet for 2024, everybody talks about the Philadelphia Eagles O-line. You have someone like Colin Cowherd saying that the Philadelphia Eagles O-line was the greatest O-line, like, of all time. I mean, like, he said that. I did the clip, and it's like, I don't even know if it was the best O-line in 2024. The stats don't bear that out. And I love how you have a brand new starting center. You lose Kelsey. You have Becton, who no one thought was good. And now somehow that's the greatest O-line in the history of the universe. So, like, how does that make sense? Like, it's just, I struggle with that. And it was the greatest O-line we've ever seen. And they were kind of just like, all right, we can move on from a couple of you guys. It's all good. It's like, well, and it's not to downplay that O-line, because that O-line was great. That's always the tricky part of these conversations. So I always talk about, I'm always just trying to have the most honest conversation we can have. And this is where we then talk ourselves in circles, because they're like, well, Saquon Barkley in 24. It's like, okay, but then what about 22? And then it's like, well, what about the fact that in both Super Bowls for Jalen Hurts, like, he did not have a run game. He had to be the run game. Yes, does he have to be the main running attack year after year after year, game after game after game? No, he does not. He does not. But when he needs to, especially in a playoff game, especially in a Super Bowl, he rises to the occasion. And so we should penalize him for not having to do that in week 7. This is what I always say. This is always like my big trump card. We hold someone like a Jalen Hurts. We kind of hold him hostage, and we want to downplay what he does in a Super Bowl or in the playoffs, all because we want to see him throw for 400 yards and 3 touchdowns against the Carolina Panthers in week 7. And my whole thing is like, I don't care about that. The moment Jalen Hurts doesn't continue to ball in the playoffs, well, then that argument gets lost. And then that's fair. But as of right now, he's earned that right. If we want to say he hasn't, well, then it's just like, well, then who has earned anything at this point? I mean, who has earned anything? And then this is where it becomes trickier and trickier, because I've had these conversations so many times that I know where so many of the pushback or some of the counter conversations have, because then people will be like, well, how is Josh Allen better? Or how is this? And it's just like, the Philadelphia Eagles are fundamentally a better run franchise. And Philadelphia Eagles fans, I'll plead to them, and they don't really do this, but it's like, don't downplay your team and your franchise. Don't do what we see the Ravens try to do, what we see the Chiefs fans try to do. It's like, don't do that. Don't be those guys. And I don't think they are. I have not seen that from them. Obviously, you're going to have a handful of them here and there, but it's not a large voice within the Philadelphia Eagles fan base that I have seen reading all of these comments personally. And that's why then my counter to those other fan bases, like of the Ravens, like that, I'm like, build a better team. You say you have a better coach, you say you have a better quarterback, then why aren't you winning? And then also, you tell me that you have a better quarterback and that your team's better, especially during the regular season, right? Like, if you were talking to Ravens fans or Bills fans, and you said, who's better, the Philadelphia Eagles or the Bills? The Philadelphia Eagles or the Ravens? I know. I have these conversations all the time on here. I know without a shadow of a doubt, they're saying that their team is better. And yet those teams can't beat the Kansas City Chiefs. And yet the Philadelphia Eagles and Jalen Hurts do dominate and do play big. That is the difference. So then it's like, so how do we reconcile that? How do we make sense of that? If your team is so much better, why do you not rise to the occasion? Why does your team not get it done, but then a team like the Philadelphia Eagles do? When the Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl and dominated the Kansas City Chiefs in the way that they did, and dominated Patrick Mahomes individually the way that defense did, that let everyone know, what's your excuse? Your excuse for years was, well, it's the Kansas City Chiefs, we can't beat them. And it's like, well, the Philadelphia Eagles just proved you clearly can. And it doesn't have to be some weird situation where it's like against the Raiders on Christmas or, you know, whatever it may be. It could be a real game with a real team in a big, important moment. Get the job done. And they don't. And they simply don't. And so if you think your team was better than the Philadelphia Eagles, why then are you then now going to say, well, the Philadelphia Eagles were stacked. They're the best team ever. What do you want them to do? Blah, 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 blah. It's like, well, why didn't you say that in December, in January? Why didn't you say that going into the Super Bowl? You probably weren't even saying that after the first quarter in the Super Bowl. But now that's the go-to take? How does that make sense? Because I remember a lot of people saying the winner of the AFC is going to win the Super Bowl. The winner of the AFC Championship game, that's the real Super Bowl. The Commanders are going to beat the Philadelphia Eagles. The Packers are going to beat the Philadelphia Eagles. The Rams were going to beat the Philadelphia Eagles. The Rams should have beat the Philadelphia Eagles. But now the Philadelphia Eagles are the most stacked team in the history of the universe. And therefore, Jalen Hurts doesn't get credit for the success that he's had. That's why this conversation just gets messier and messier and messier. And that's why I keep saying, it's like, what is the criteria? What is the actual conversation that we're having then? Because they're all different conversations. And I try my best to outline it. I really do, but it's hard. I mean, it really is. It's really hard to try to have the conversation where you're talking about. And that's why I do think it's actually kind of helpful to be like, well, what type of quarterback would Joe Burrow be if he was with the Philadelphia Eagles, or or Josh Allen or Lamar, etc. I don't know if Lamar Jackson wins these Super Bowls with the Philadelphia Eagles, because he has not played great in playoff games. And again, I've defended him for some of those struggles, but I can't say with a high level of confidence, I know if he was in the Super Bowl against the Kansas City Chiefs, Lamar Jackson is bringing it. I can't make that statement. I can make that statement about Jalen Hurts because I've seen it with my own eyes twice. Not once, twice. So it just becomes an actual indisputable fact. That's why these conversations are so layered. But I'm not also saying, well, Lamar Jackson's clearly inferior to Jalen Hurts. It's like, not saying that either. So best of luck making sense of all of this. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about Jalen Hurts having to be top 5, according to Nick Wright, and having it be like a solidified top 5? And do you believe that he actually believes that? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment. So whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. Please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all generally feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.